mean, jogging potatoes, asthma, ridden mounds, grinning and dancing on wooden clogs. Everyone's there, the whole race gang, plus some that you may have come up with yourself. Thieving suck kids. Cast of oceans, hatching some kind of scheme in the eye of his race.
A striking woman leans against the cabin top of her sailing boat, smiling as you approach. Her green raincoat glistens with droplets. A silk scarf is tied around her throat.
Good afternoon, officers. I'm Joyce. Joyce L. Messier. I represent the board of Wild Pines, the owners of the harbour. You gentlemen must be from the RCM. I'm glad to see you here.
Like steel, there is strength there. If she wanted, she could sink her nails deep into your skin.
I was dispatched to handle a strike, not a lynching. Anything I can do to assist the RCM in this matter, I will, gladly.
That is good to hear, madame. My colleague will take the lead on this interview. I should let you know that he is recovering from an unusual medical episode. Very unusual. But I can assure you of his ultimate competency.
How interesting. I wish you a swift recovery. In the meanwhile, you have my full cooperation, and the full cooperation of the Wild Pines Group. Everything. Right up to, but not including, trade secrets. First, you'd have to repeal the Emergencies Act of Trade in Aliments that gives me the right to silence. It's quite the octopus. Why? By throwing off half a century of foreign domination under the Coalition. Unfortunately for you, the Coalition also leases you the right to police West Revachol.
You'd be shooting yourself in the foot, in other words.
But I am derailing us. You wanted to know about the strike. I believe the official title is Senior Labor Negotiator. In practice, I'm a grocery clerk. I relay the union's demands to Wild Pines and return with Wild Pines' counteroffer.
And how are the talks going?
They're not. That's the problem. The union stopped all negotiations a week ago, after that awful lynching took place. Now they won't even let me into the harbour. There's a 2-meter 20 racist behemoth blocking the gates. Oh, so you've met him. Has he beguiled you with his inane theories?
My colleague has his peculiarities. Let's not go into this particular one just yet.
Of course. To each their own. Let's say I was not making the kind of progress I'd hoped for when I first arrived.
And when did you first arrive?
I arrived 3 weeks ago. Yes, in the middle of February. The bay was still partially frozen then. I prefer to do these things on site, like the RCM.
But the strike began in December.
I wasn't the original negotiator here. I took over after Mr. Gaumont hit a wall with Mr. Clare, the union boss. Mr. Clare refused to speak with Gaumont despite concessions he'd granted the union in prior negotiations.
This isn't the first time the union has gone on strike.
Heavens no. There have been 2 prior strikes. Both times the union won significant concessions, including overtime pay and a medical plan. This time their demands are more, I guess you could say, aggressive. There are leaflets everywhere, and banners. What did they say again? Oh yes. Every worker, a member of the board.
Most of the workers probably don't know what that means.
In its defense, another said, demand democracy. Pretty tame stuff compared to every worker, a member of the board. Fortunately, they explained it. Every time the Wild Pines group makes a decision about anything, it needs the signature of each of the 2,200 workers in its Martinez terminal. Just so you understand, this is but one of 22 terminals owned by Wild Pines. Essentially, not only are they kings of the company, they are also kings of the 72,000 employees of Wild Pines Group. I'm not sure. Naturally, I assume that was just their opening position, a hard-nosed tactic with a side of mockery. But there's been no follow-up, just the same nonsensical slogan repeated over and over again. And now, people are getting lynched, I hear. Behind the whirling in rags. A disastrous situation if there ever was one.
Excuse me, from whom did you hear about this lynching?
I first heard it from the bowyer at the gates. The one whose very name advertises his aversion to work. I think he said it was, "Call me mañana."
This checks out.
Mr. Clare told him to... how did he put it? Fuck off, midget. Gaumont is short of stature, you see. Yes. Keep in mind, this is a negotiator Mr. Clare has worked with before, and who was more than fair with him and the union. The scabs? You mean the huddled masses of Jamrock, come to plead for work where the union refuses to? If they were organized by Wild Pines or its affiliates, then it would be a company secret. I could not share it with you. Not right now, at least.
It's implied. She's open to discussing this matter with you at a later occasion.
Everard Clare is a man of the utmost integrity. If you can say one thing about him, it's that he always puts the interests of the workers first. Of course not. Everard is fantastically corrupt. I imagine he has a thick, viscous goo where you and I have blood. He is the most corrupt individual I have ever seen, and I deal with men like him for a living. If there is anyone more venal, more irredeemably nepotistic, then it's his twin brother, Edgar. Yes, Edgar looks exactly like his brother, except for that lazy eye. He also talks exactly like Everard does, and when one's term as foreman is up, the other takes over. It's how they circumvent the term limits, you see, with a funny little switcheroo. While in office, they've embezzled God knows how much of their workers' dues. The Débardeurs Union was once a perfectly normal institution. 20 years ago, anyway. It must not have been easy to establish under the Emergency Act, but they did it. I can respect that. Organized labor at its best, as they say. Then something happened in the local chapter elections. The brothers Clare came and transformed it into a... how do you say?
A mob. The Débardeurs are a crime syndicate. Sad as it may be, I suspect we'll be forced to cooperate with them.
Refreshingly honest, officer. The company has tried appeasing in the past, but I'm afraid our concessions have only emboldened Everard and his brother. And your opinion, detective, if I may ask? I'm a curious and talkative person, you see. Would you say the Débardeurs Union is... Of course, officer. I'm glad you asked. There was a woman, the previous forewoman of the Union. She disappeared.
Disappeared?
Yes. On the last day of the local chapter elections, her daughter phoned in and said she wasn't running anymore. Or coming to work. Ever. End of story. Downright haunting, if you ask me. The Wild Pines suspected foul play, but what could they do? It was a union matter. The point of the presentation is, these kinds of things happen around the Clares. Watch out when you're dealing with him.
Thank you for your concern, ma'am. We'll be just fine.
Of course. How else can I help? Why, yes I am. Of course there are. We're on an archipelago. How else are you supposed to get around? I mean, we are on Le Caillou, are we not?
She nods attentively.
Good. What we do. I'm afraid I don't speak for Wild Pines as a whole. It's a giant undertaking. The Pines' core competency is logistics. Container shipping, freight, that sort of thing. See those airships there, blinking? Those are the shipping side of things. And that is the terminal. Another subdivision deals with energy, oil and gas exploration, offshore platforms.
The Wild Pines Group is one of the original Revacholian Indo-tribes. Companies awarded royal monopolies by the king, the suzerain himself, centuries ago. The king is long gone, but several of the Indo-tribes remain. Saint-Baptiste, Elysium, an unknown entity known as Brightest Star.
Why, thank you. I'm not at liberty to discuss the company balance sheet, but I can tell you that last year, the company booked more than 20 billion real in revenue.
Wow. Damn, that's a lot.
8 billion?
Hmm.
$20 billion is a large number, but the conglomerate employs 72,000 people. They all need to be paid. Then there are capital improvements, interest payments. A conglomerate the size of the Wild Pines is like a shark. If it stops moving, it will die. Then what becomes of those 72,000 families? It's a tremendous responsibility. They started as an exploration and cargo fleet conducting trade between the Samaran and Insulindian Isolas 250 years ago, when pine ships explored the South Seminese and charted Lomantang on behalf of the suzerain. Centuries of care, deliberation, and madness have gone into this endeavor. Vessels pass through the great unrest to re-emerge with apricots in tow. The logic of the system is totalizing. It's taken everything from its employees to build it. You mean aside from being the terminal's legal owners, who are responsible for moving 8% of the world's cargo?
She nods.
Quite a few things, I'm afraid. The information I'm to share with you includes sensitive trade secrets. For the sake of my employer, I have to ask for your names and badge numbers.
Of course, ma'am. We should have introduced ourselves. I am Lieutenant Kitsuragi from Precinct 57. And this is my colleague from Precinct 41. I'm afraid he doesn't have his badge at the moment. I hope mine will suffice.
How curious. Why is that, Detective? I see. So, are you saying you lost your badge during the course of this episode? I can't hear you, darling. Speak up, please. Oh dear. Some kind of encephalopathic amnesia. I don't even know how to respond. I do believe you, naive as that may sound. I simply can't imagine what you gain by faking such a condition.
As I said, ma'am, his technique may be very unconventional, but he is an officer of the RCM.
Of course, I sympathize. But I'm afraid I simply can't share anything more until I've seen that badge.
She's a professional negotiator. She should be open to some sort of mutually beneficial arrangement.
Right?
Feelings
Oh,
will
shit.
guide the way.
I assure you, it is no small matter for me either. We all share the responsibility for disarming this situation. I hope you have a badge for me as soon as possible.
She's silent. The wind flaps the sail above her.
Officer,
What?
you know, I don't mean to sound cold, but if you want something, you have to give something back. More than just guilt.
You're doing it. Despite your own best efforts, you're still getting in. Somehow.
I'll be frank with you. If I'm going to break protocol, I need to be able to justify it to my superiors. They're going to want to see something tangible. The Union is conducting drug trade out of the harbor. It's an open secret in Martinez. Surely it must not come as a complete surprise to the RCM either. Perhaps it's time to look into it. Or you can find your badge, which honestly seems like a lost cause.
Detective, a word in private before we continue. This is not going quite as I hoped it would, Detective. Honestly, I was expecting you to use your unorthodox technique to keep her off balance, and not volunteer us to be her henchman. This woman is running circles around us. She might have known about your misplaced badge all along, or she's simply an adept improviser. Either way, we've played straight into her hands.
Maybe this is all her plan. She might have heard about you.
Oh, that would be fantastic, but do we have the time? The world is large and your badge is 8 by 6 centimeters.
The situation might have changed drastically by the time you locate it. Time is of the essence.
You could request a new one from the station, but that would literally take months. No. If there is reasonable suspicion, we must investigate. Otherwise, she could claim we are siding with the Union, or that we are on their take. We'd never hear the end of it. What I propose is, we ask her, then we investigate, briefly. But do not share the outcome of this investigation with her. We tell her it's done and demand for her information on the lynching. I wouldn't go that far. Her reaction did come off as sincere to me. I think she's just quick to adapt. She's a professional, after all.
You're back. Good. What can I help you with? What we do? I'm afraid I don't speak for Wild Pines as a whole. It's a giant undertaking. The Pines core competent, and that is...
The Wild Pines Group is one of the original Revacholian Indo tribes. Companies awarded royal...
Why, thank you. I'm not at liberty...
$1 billion?
And to think, there are years when the group books losses in the billions. Wild Pines employs 72,000 people, all of whom have families that depend on their salaries. It is a tremendous responsibility.
She nods.
That's the man who was killed. I'm afraid this is a discussion for once we've cleared the lynching question. Better not tie the fourth day to the backstay on this. I hope there is something else I can help you with. It's quite straightforward. Someone is using Terminal B to smuggle raw ingredients from the Samar and Isola into Revachol with the Union's blessing. Wild Pines has suspected it for years.
Ingredients for what, ma'am?
Meth and dextroamphetamine, GBL and various synthetic psychedelics. Honestly, it might be quicker to say what you can't make from the stuff. Yeah.
Wild Pine seems to be well apprised of the local drug trade, ma'am. Do you mean to say the Union also produces the product? Sells drugs, I mean?
We're in logistics. It's our business to know. And no. As far as the company knows, the Union does not produce it. They transport the ingredients for a cut. Yes, but you won't get anything out of Evrat and the Dock Workers Union. Still, every chain has its weak link.
The handoff. The motor lorries at the roundabout.
Precisely. Someone needs to move the ingredients from the harbour into the city. Once they reach Jamrock, they're distributed to a network of local manufacturers well beyond our grasp. But in transit, they're vulnerable. Perhaps you've noticed that a number of lorries are tangled in a traffic jam at the roundabout just now. Interview the drivers who are still hanging about. One of them might be waiting for a crucial shipment. I'll be explicit. If you find this driver, I will share company secrets with you.
Uncovering Union secrets could also give you an upper hand when dealing with them.
No. We asked East Motor Track to raise the drawbridge. The road company is a partner of one of our subsidiaries. However, this is a limited time opportunity. Once the complaint has been processed by the Trade Committee, they'll have no choice but to lower the drawbridge, and the operation will continue. Thousands of litres of raw ingredients will pour onto the streets of Revachol. Not the east across the river, but the west. The vulnerable, the weary.
Well, at least this solves one mystery.
What is that, Lieutenant?
Why I had to call East Motor Tract and beg them to open a drawbridge for me. I'd wondered since I first drove in, on my motor carriage.
I am sorry for the inconvenience, Lieutenant Kisaragi, but we need them trapped here. This is a unique opportunity. I'm sure you understand. We did. On more than one occasion. Apparently, there's some sort of inter-precinct disagreement about whose jurisdiction this area falls under.
We know the company has launched its own probe into the Union's alleged involvement. We also know it's come up empty. It's not just the RCM. No one's been able to find any hard evidence.
Well, here's your chance, officers. How do you think they're financing this strike? There are thousands of unpaid dock workers going strong for the 4th month straight.
There was a shakedown of local businesses preceding the strike. Many were squeezed to bankruptcy to fund it.
With all due respect to these desert cacti, the contents of a few cash registers cannot provide for 2,000 men. The local businesses can scarcely provide for themselves. Precisely. Smuggled out of that very gate at night, most likely, then loaded onto lorries and driven to Jamrock. You simply need to find one driver who will open up to you. Yes? Excellent. According to my reports, there are at least 3 lorry drivers lingering near the roundabout. Hopefully one of them will know something. It may come to nothing, or it may just blow the case wide open. I can keep the drawbridge up for a few more days at least. You should have the time you need. In the meantime, let me know if there's any other way I may be of assistance. Of course, Detective. Take care.
Cannot move. What is happening?
Advanced race theory.